Some of these plays on the ball were certainly a bit risky, and so there were some occasional misses in there. On this one, he's in time on the rotation but lunges for more and comes up empty, and sometimes he'd sell out for a pick six, and when those plays failed, they often exposed the defense and led to a high-value shot.
All right, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Hope you all are having a good day so far. So I was asked to check out this video, and fair is fair, so I'm going to check it out. This is from one of my favorite channels called Thinking Basketball, and he has a Greatest Peaks series. And I've checked out a couple of these, but not enough of them, honestly. I got to go back and finish all these. One I have not done is the LeBron James one. So this is called a detailed analysis of LeBron James at his best. Greatest Peaks, episode number 13. So I wanted to check this out. I'm pretty sure this is going to be covering him in Miami. Probably 2012, 2013 range. That's what I would probably base it on if I was thinking basketball. But we'll see what he's got in store for us. As I always do, I'm going to link the original video down below. Whether you like LeBron James or not, you all know I don't. Don't take that out on Thinking Basketball. He's got a fantastic channel, in my opinion, one of the best basketball YouTube channels out there. So if you like the format of this video and you like the work that was done here, I highly suggest you go out over there and subscribe to his channel. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Link is going to be down below in the description for you. Let's do this, you guys. It's going to be about a 28-minute long one, so it's going to be a little bit longer form. And let's not waste any time. So like the video if you don't mind. I'd appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get into it.
The hardest thing to figure out about LeBron James at his peak might just be when exactly he peaked. LeBron hit another gear in the 2009 season, winning his first MVP and authoring one of the most incredible statistical profiles in NBA history. At 24, he had the perfect blend of youthful speed and explosive power. And in his second tour of Northeast Ohio, LeBron's offensive mastery produced incredible playoff moments. And those seasons are great choices, but during those championship seasons in South Beach, his ability to do almost everything might have taken him to heights that no one has ever reached.
All right, looks like we're agreeing on this one then.
What greatness is all about.
Where's Larry Bird in all this?
Has it blocked by Elijah Wan. Michael Jordan saves the day.
This series tackles one question: who was the best at his best? We start at the ABA merger and go through the best multi-year stretches, examining the legends who provided the most on-court impact.
Yeah, the Kareem one was really fun.
Are the greatest peaks.
So, okay, nailed it.
For me, it could be compared to Michael, Magic,
2012,
Kobe,
2013.
all the ones that's making so success in the league. You know, it's great, and I'm going to just keep working hard, and someday it could be another one that could be compared to me.
From a distance, LeBron just looked bigger and stronger than other players. But zoom in and there's way more going on. During those Miami years, his game was built around getting to the rim, and he approached the basket in just about every way imaginable. He drops his shoulder, goes off his left foot, and finishes southpaw here. But on this one, he dips the shoulder and jumps off 2 feet to float one in from short range. Here's another variant. He has a runway but springs into a jump stop, and fluid, adaptable athleticism was key to LeBron's finishing prowess. Of course, his size was a huge factor too, crossing back to the left, and notice how quickly the ball gets to about 10 feet so he can release it away from those long Tim Duncan arms. LeBron's mass was arguably more important than his length, able to plow through contact from defenders. Jimmy Butler gives LeBron a pretty healthy push here, and unlike lankier penetrators, it barely derailed the L train, and he still has the balance to explode for the stop.
By the way, I got to point it out. Back then, even though he did bulk up a little bit from where he was in his first stint in Cleveland, he still looked kind of normal, like kind of a natural looking physique. Now he's like a block.
Stuff. LeBron was probably the best ever at absorbing blows in midair while still powering up a good shot, which requires incredible body awareness and reactivity. These reactions are automatic, subconscious movements. This contact blunts his vertical leap, so he adjusts by pulling the ball back and arching it over the defender. This is unprecedented neurological wiring in such a giant explosive body. Here, he has the instinct to dip his shoulder in front of the defender, who bounces off LeBron as he organically twists into a layup. Some of this is just physics. A 275-pound body moving at high speeds packs quite a punch. Paul George goes flying here, and again LeBron adjusts off his right leg and finishes with the left hand. And yes, it was reported that James weighed in at 270-something pounds during these seasons, slightly heavier than the 250 to 260 he supposedly played at in Cleveland a few years prior.
Well, what the hell is he at now? Like 300?
And that zapped some of his acceleration. In 2009, his first step was quicker, and his combination of speed and power were at video game levels. If we're submitting entries into the all-time highlight competition, this first MVP year is the version to nominate. But that additional explosiveness was offset by a weaker outside shot, a game that wasn't quite as refined, and somewhat paradoxically, he wasn't a definitively better finisher on his drives back then. This is because he developed so many ways to finish at the cup, from contorting reverses to little spin moves that finished with a soft push shot.
You know, and I really wish he would have worked on his outside game instead, because he was always good at driving to the basket since he was a rookie. But if he would have combined that with a good outside shot, he would have been completely unstoppable in my mind. And I was waiting for him to do it from early on, and I just figured, okay, MJ didn't have a solid outside shot until a little later in his career. So I thought that's what LeBron was going to do, but instead LeBron just kept working on his driving game. And now we're left with a basically that's still all he has 21 years in. He's good at driving the basketball.
LeBron was a master of tempo, of controlling speeds. Take this drive into Duncan, where slowing down is the key to creating space for a gentle finish. Despite weighing more than Karl Malone, his agility and explosiveness were still guard-like, and with a screen he was surgical, attacking the position of the second defender. He leans the wrong way here, so LeBron rejects the screen and explodes in a straight line. Yet on this one, he feels the defender too far left, so he builds momentum going around the pick, and then he's an unstoppable freight train, and that is just bionic strength and dexterity that would make Isaac Asimov proud.
No, that one's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
There were more subtle tricks, too. He knows Duncan waits to commit to a shot, so he upfakes on an explosive jump stop before stepping through for the layup. All of this made LeBron one of the best finishers ever. Among qualifying players, he has the highest field goal percentage season at the rim this century, and since he maintained comparable efficiencies in the playoffs, there's a great argument these are the best finishing seasons ever. These superpowers were only amplified in trends.
Well, I think we need to compare him to big men, like centers, when we're talking about shooting percentages, just because the majority of his shots are right there at the basket. So we need to compare him to guys like Dwight Howard, Shaq, David Robinson, stuff like that, you know?
Position where he could build ahead of steam and attack into open space. He just shed smaller players like they were mosquitoes.
Barbosa.
This is the android upgrade of what we saw in episode 5 from Magic Johnson, out sprinting everyone and changing directions at high speeds while completely under control. Size and speed are one thing, but LeBron's ability to decelerate, remain controlled, and flow into a move supercharged his fast break scoring. He could use those same half-court tools, change of tempo, varied jumping angles, and so on, only with a head of steam against backpedaling defenses. Even with big men in the paint, LeBron could shift on the fly. He's angling toward the middle here, but then slides left for two. And there is a cerebral component to many of these. He throws a head fake to freeze a defender, and he's unstoppable with all that space to attack. Bron did this stuff to great defenders too. Andre Iguodala's hips are facing left here, so LeBron goes right. Then Andre recovers, so he gives him an inside out for the full spin cycle. In real time, the whole thing is a blur, and it's free throws.
Yeah.
It was basically impossible to slow down James in transition, running alongside him or recovering to the paint because of his width and change of direction. Here, the defender is basically even with him, but since he's so much smaller, he's essentially poster decoration. In short, LeBron was the most devastating transition scorer the league had ever seen, and 2012-13 is the best two-year stretch in Synergy's database, averaging an insane 1.4 points per possession in transition on over 4 opportunities a game, numbers he nearly replicated to a T in the postseason. The totality of all this made LeBron one of the best scorers ever, with his playoff runs in Miami stacking up incredibly well against just about anybody in league history when adjusting for opponent quality. Another key to LeBron's scoring during these years was the development of his post game. These plays weren't nearly as deadly as his transition game or half-court drives, but adding some back-to-the-basket skills kept defenses honest and gave him another arrow in his quiver.
Sloppy. It did, and I did notice that in Miami as well, that he was working on his post-game a little bit. That was 13 years ago. So it just he never really refined it. But if he would have, I mean, think about Karl Malone, because they have a similar body style, similar physique. Karl Malone's bread and butter was the pick and roll and his post game, his mid-range jumper. I'm telling you, man, because the driving ability of LeBron James surpasses Karl Malone. So if you could have combined Karl Malone's post game and mid-range shot with LeBron's driving abilities, LeBron would have been completely unstoppable offensively. There would have been no answer to him. But he never worked on that mid-range and that post game, unfortunately, because that's all that was really lacking on the offensive end for him.
He often caught it in the mid,
and then he wouldn't have to play ISO so much, and then he would have less turnovers. So many things would improve if he got his butt in the post. But in order to do that, he has to stop playing point guard. You know what I mean? Because he has to play off the ball, post up, receive the ball in the post, and make things happen there. So I think it was less that he didn't want to work on it, more that he wanted to continue playing point guard. And he still is to this day. Last time I watched him play was on Christmas, and yeah, he was still playing point.
Post and went to work, backing down smaller wings, and with his size advantage and great balance, he could wheel into shots down low or bust out that spin move that he loved. There's a Tim Duncan-esque use of the offhand to protect the ball against Kawhi Leonard. We often think of great scorers as having pretty fadeaways or nasty go-to moves, but LeBron's physical dominance and fantastic feel carved out hyper-efficient shots, and he balanced those shots with a respectable outside game.
This would have been a good go-to move for him if he would have worked on this a little more.
Efficient shots.
That turnaround, like, it's not a hook, but it's a one-hand, whatever you want to call that, like a bank floater. That would have been a really good go-to move for him to do on a consistent basis, because he doesn't have the fadeaway. He doesn't have a jumper like that. But like this, he can just slap it against the backboard.
And he balanced those shots with a respectable outside game. This was a shift from his younger years, where he was near the bottom of the league in outside shooting percentages, but in Miami, he jumped above league average on his long-range shots.
Oh, he did?
Behind a slightly smoother shooting motion, LeBron was more patient getting into his jumper, and as a result, he made about 42% of his long twos in Miami, a step up from the 39% he made in his final 2 years in Cleveland. He also improved by more than 3 percentage points from downtown after making only 34% of his threes between 2009 and 2011. So, during these seasons, LeBron's outside shot rounded out his incredible scoring game, but that was only half of his offensive equation because his playmaking talents helped take him to another level.
Training in the pool.
Baby, we can go anytime. You just let me know what's good for you.
You can't get through Detroit training in no pool. You think Michael
he's about to say it. I used to train in the pool because of Michael Jordan.
training in the pool? No, I don't think so.
He did not come fly with
Stop
me.
looking at my lemonade.
Here I come! Cannonball!
Because LeBron was so effective driving to the hoop, defenses would counter by packing the paint, forcing him to beat them with his jumper. Dallas did this to some degree in the 2011 finals, not overreacting to him as a shooter, and then loading up on his drives. Tyson Chandler.
Everyone who shut him down did the same thing. San Antonio did it in the finals. Boston did it in the conference finals. And yeah, Dallas did it in the finals as well. That's the way you beat LeBron James, is you play off of him. Give him space, dare him to shoot. And if he's going to drive, yeah, you got to have some defenders down there. So he actually benefits from the current game because if he can get past his first guy, there's nobody waiting for him at the rim. It used to be more challenging with teams like Boston and San Antonio because they would stack the paint. So, you know, it's not so easy. You got to blow by your first guy and still dunk on someone. So, yeah, the trick is to just completely play off of him. But if I was playing against the Lakers right now, I'd play off of him, and I'd always have a dedicated guy ready to clog that paint. And I don't care. I don't care about the rest. Just let it happen. But he'll take the dare and he'll start shooting. And that's exactly what you want. Be down there in the paint to contest and also to rebound those bricks.
Spies James instead of worrying about the weak side, and so two big men are waiting for him in the paint.
Yep, that's it.
When the Mavericks clogged these driving lanes like this, they were content with Mario Chalmers or Dwyane Wade beating them with outside shots. There was more to LeBron's huge scoring drop-off in that series than just Dallas's defense, but 2 years later, a fantastic Spurs team packed the paint again and made LeBron's driving gaps as narrow as possible. It was common for multiple Spurs players to converge on him in the lane, and this strategy limited LeBron's effectiveness more than any other series between 2012 and 14, although that improved jumper still made it a solid scoring series for James. And this is where a more diverse scoring arsenal made him so difficult to slow down.
Yeah, but like I was saying earlier, if you would have mastered that outside game and that mid-range game, then he might have gone 4 for 4 in Miami. But Dallas and San Antonio used the same strategy to shut him down, and it worked. That's a problem. You know what I mean? Because those two championships, those two finals, I mean, it was blown by this guy. And yeah, they used the same strategy. San Antonio used the same strategy on him twice now and beat him twice in the finals. But he hasn't come up with a counter move.
Not only with outside shots, but by playing out of the post. Post play provided a different angle to attack from. Defenses couldn't really load up on any driving lanes in these spots, and because LeBron was such a gifted passer, it made doubling him down there a bit tricky. If teams weren't careful, a double team could create short, easy kickouts to three-point shooters, and a huge part of LeBron's offensive value was unlocking long-range marksmen out on the perimeter. With the Spurs clogging the lane, LeBron sets up a rim finish, but it's really a pass, and crafty deliveries like this gave shooters optimal breathing room. If he didn't throw it early, he had the strength to skip it across the court, where it was a longer recovery for the defense.
All right, that's a hard pass right there.
That's just incredible speed from that position to beat the closeout. James might have been the best skip passer the league had ever seen, swinging it cross-court to his bandmates, and when teams tried to sit in his driving gaps, changing sides like this is a natural counter. Of course, LeBron also manipulated defenders. There's no indication he's passing as he turns the corner here, and the look away prevents this defender from playing the passing lane, and it's a clean shot. He could hit these same passes in transition against a wall of defenders. The velocity on that one buys the shooter more time, and again, he uses his drive to disguise a delivery. That move sent Kevin Garnett in the wrong direction, giving Mario Chalmers all day to shoot. That driving pressure and a powerful dribble took him right into the teeth of the defense, where he could spray it around to wide open shooters. Miami shot 38% from downtown, with LeBron on the court in his final 3 seasons there, surrounding him with better three-point weapons and going to smaller, stretchier lineups. Unfortunately, their second best player, Dwyane Wade, was a poor three-point shooter, which wasn't an ideal fit next to James.
Yeah. Dwyane Wade needed the ball in his hands. Let's be real. That's when the Miami Heat were successful, was with him having the ball in his hands.
Wade was coming off one of the great peaks in league history himself, and in many ways was functionally similar to LeBron. He was a dangerous finisher and difficult to keep out of the lane, and he could spearhead an entire offense with a pick-and-roll game as well. In effect, this made him LeBron's backup because the Heat could flank James or Wade with identical lineups. But since neither of them were really good spot-up shooters, on possessions initiated by Wade, LeBron was less valuable standing in the corner. A good shooter just ends up with a high percentage 3 there instead.
Yeah. I used to say a thing that, and I haven't found one person in this world yet to agree with me. Back when this trade happened and the Big Three was formed in Miami, I was thinking about it in my head, and I'm like, but they play the same role, Dwyane Wade and LeBron James. So I'm thinking, okay, here's what I would do. And it's a crazy idea, but here's exactly what I would do. I want one of them on the court at all times. So I want, say, my starting lineup has Dwyane Wade in it. LeBron's coming off the bench. But it's not like how you would think. It's more set up like an Olympics style situation. They're going to play equal time. And we're just going to have like 6 minutes each quarter. However we figure that out, we figure it out. It depends on who's more clutch and who's not. The more clutch player is going to close out the game. But I want one of them out there at all times running the entire offense. So LeBron's in, D-Wade's resting. D-Wade's in, LeBron is resting. And imagine Chris Bosh is out there dominating the whole time. Ray Allen is dominating the whole time, along with Haslam, Chalmers, all those guys. But that's the way I would play it. That way your bench is, the opposing bench is about to get annihilated. Because while you guys are resting, we've got a whole second unit out there that's basically as good as anybody else's starting lineup. I know it sounds crazy, but in my head, that team would win like 75 games.
Though Wade-centric possessions were perfectly effective, Miami's best offense was LeBron ball, giving him the keys and letting him make the primary decisions. Miami actually excelled when James played without his sidekick, logging over 40 games without Wade during these seasons at a 57-win pace. With Wade, they were only a touch better, reaching a 59-win pace, and most notably, the Heat's offensive efficiency was slightly better without Dwyane.
And that, in my mind, is less to do with Dwyane Wade and more so about what I said, which is you got two guys trying to do the exact same job. We now have a conflict. I'm experiencing it here in Phoenix right now. We've got 3 dudes who do the same job and are our highest paid players: Beal, Book, and KD. Same kind of guys. I'd rather them alter the lineup to where it's either KD or Booker out there. You know what I mean? Same thing I'm talking about in Miami would be what I would do in Phoenix. One or the other is out there, not both of them. It's a waste. It's a waste of time having both of them out there.
That Heat offense was good in the regular season and fantastic in the playoffs, a pattern that has held for LeBron's entire prime, which is a testament to his scoring and playmaking ability. making him the centerpiece of a heliocentric system with the right finishers orbiting around him, produced historically good offense because of his decision making. For instance, take this pop quiz. Where's the optimal pass? Congratulations if you found it, because the Thunder were blindsided by that pass, and for good reason. We've seen him snap it to this corner if the strong side defender slides over, and if he feels the weak side defender leaning toward the roll man, he could fire it to the other wing for more target practice. Some of these require elite reflexes, snapping off passes when an opening emerges, and here the roll man pops away from the hoop, and as LeBron looks for him, it takes a millisecond before he processes the cut to the basket and delivers a laser. Great passers not only deliver balls quickly, but they camouflage releases from a variety of angles, so when LeBron touched the paint, defenses had little indication of what was coming. A kick out to a shooter, a drop off to a big man, or a score. They basically all look the same until the moment the ball leaves his hands, and he usually chose the best option. All of this takes great spatial awareness, tracking multiple defenders, so when one moves, he knows exactly where to attack.
Great googly moogly.
This one takes some grandmaster recognition, eyeing an angle with Tim Duncan's hands down and throwing a rope the second his receiver gets inside position. Like all high-end passers, LeBron would try some into tight coverage that didn't pan out, and I think his vision and reads improved in later seasons. He almost never missed straightforward layups like this one, but he could overlook some slightly trickier hookups. That's there for the taking, and we've seen post players hit this cutter a number of times during this series.
To be fair, back then he averaged a lot less turnovers than he does now, so he's gotten a lot more sloppy, and he takes a lot more risks with these cross-court passes. By cross-court, I mean from here to here. You know what I mean? He does that a lot more now. Back then, I wouldn't say it was a bad thing if he was missing some of these passes back then. It just means he was a little more careful with the ball, which is something that I actually appreciate.
He also wasn't regularly tossing this lob pass to the roll man back then like he would in subsequent years, and sometimes his bounce passes could be a bit tough to handle for his big men.
Yeah, that was a bad pass.
Still, that vision and quick processing led to some
what could have been done here?
And sometimes his bounce passes could be a bit tough to handle for his
he should have went up. Yeah, that shouldn't have been a bounce pass. He should have lobbed it. Easy.
Big man.
Yeah, he fucked up.
Still, that vision and quick processing led to some spectacular passes in dynamic situations, chugging down the court here for a lob, and then, yes, that is exactly what you think. A touch pass where he leaves the ball hanging right in front of the rim. Between his visual processing and that fluid athleticism, there were moments where he was almost bird-like with some passes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hate to admit it, but it does remind me a little bit of Bird's touch passes.
To anticipate openings and then snap off high-value dimes. In transition, he was a little Magic-like, pushing the pace with speed and forcing defenses to commit so he could drop it off.
I mean, let's be real. What we did get, at least in a regular season, from the Big 3 Miami Heat or the Big 4 Miami Heat, was the closest thing to the Showtime Lakers that we had in those modern times. So 20 years after Showtime Lakers, we had this, and it was interesting. It was different, but they pushed the envelope. The problem is they couldn't get it done in the finals 2 out of 4 times. But as far as regular season, man, at that point, LeBron James was the guy in the regular season. He was kicking ass in the regular season. But it's when the playoffs came around and real series happened that other teams found counters to LeBron's style, his run and gun style, and they were able to shut him down. I hate to make a comparison, but my favorite quarterback of all time is Peyton Manning. And it kind of reminds me of that, where every single season, Peyton was God's gift to quarterback. They were winning so many games in the regular season. Nobody had a shot against the Colts. until the playoffs. The playoffs, they struggled. And that's hard for me because, like I said, that's my favorite quarterback of all time. But I have to admit where he faltered, and that was in the playoffs. I don't know if I should say in the clutch, because I don't know if he was choking as much as the opposing teams came up with great defensive schemes to stop him. And with LeBron James here in Miami, he was easily the best player in the regular season, but opposing teams came up with schemes to stop him in the playoffs, and it was effective. So that's why we saw this 2-4 situation out there, was because they had their one style of play, and if that got countered, it was over for them. It was all LeBron ball. So that's why I think, I still have that strategy of have Dwyane Wade come in, sub in for LeBron. Because if the LeBron style ball isn't working, well, let's try D Wade style ball. Because guess what? D Wade beat the Dallas Mavericks without LeBron on the Miami Heat. So D Wade style ball might have worked in ways where LeBron style ball wasn't working. You know what I mean? Instead, we're just wasting Dwyane Wade by putting him in the lineup with LeBron when you don't really need, we don't need a Dwyane Wade just playing off the ball. That wasn't his style.
Three-man wall in the lane to barricade his penetration, and that leads to wide open threes. And here OKC forms a wall at an angle, which creates an alley that LeBron quickly spots for free throws. You might have noticed how many of these assists were to Wade. He and LeBron had really nice chemistry on cuts to the basket, and while Flash was still a great offensive player in those seasons, the more he receded into a secondary role, the better LeBron's numbers became. His shot creation estimates with Wade in the game were in the 93rd percentile historically in the playoffs, but with Wade on the bench, they would have ranked 8th all time, almost perfectly matching his earlier numbers in Cleveland. His free throw rates with Wade dipped to the 93rd percentile, but without him they would have ranked 7th all time, again fairly close to his numbers as a Cav. So, as a result, LeBron's scoring went to another stratosphere in those playoffs with his Slash brother on the bench, surpassing even Michael Jordan with what would be the best adjusted numbers.
Once again, that's the proof. They didn't need to be playing at the same time
in playoff history.
Yep, and if we would have been able to see it, we would have seen Dwyane Wade's numbers skyrocket while LeBron James was on the bench. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure it out. If you know hoops, you don't want two guys playing the same role. It's like putting Shaquille O'Neal and Dwight Howard in the same lineup. You wouldn't do it. You'd have one of them come off the bench.
That's not an entirely apples to apples comparison, but it's part of why the Heat offense was more efficient, playing a larger brand of LeBron ball. So while LeBron was the centerpiece of an incredibly effective attack, all of his athleticism and computational power helped on the other end of the court, where he was a key component in Miami's defense. During their 4-year run, the Heatles frequently attacked ball screens with a second defender, which meant other defenders had to scramble behind the play as everyone recovered. And this blitzing of the pick and roll created a kind of frenetic approach on defense that required a ton of coordinated rotations and also forced a lot of turnovers. Sometimes this scheme asked James to sprint across the court to a popping big man. This would be an impossible rotation if the screener flared to the three-point line, but LeBron was so fast in a straight line that he could arrive when these passes did.
Yeah, that's why I picked 2012 and 2013, by the way, as his prime, and I'm glad Thinking Basketball picked the exact same thing. For me, the reason is pretty simple. It has less to do with his offensive game, because that never really changed throughout his career. It's that these 2 years in Miami, he's under the Pat Riley system and a championship culture. He actually played pretty decent defense during that time. I wouldn't say good defense, but he played team defense for those 2 years. I didn't really see him do it his first year, 2011, and I didn't really see the same effort in 2014. But 2012 and 2013, freaking LeBron James actually played defense. So at that point, you know, like all I have is a complaint about his choking and the fact that he doesn't have a good post-up game and a good deep ball. So, like, I'm down to 3 complaints at that point because defense has always been a major complaint to have for LeBron James. So, yeah, these are those couple of years in Miami, I was seeing more of a complete player. And unfortunately, he left them in the dust, and then he hasn't played a lick of defense since.
He had great awareness of on-ball threats, sliding over to help early here, and choking off this pass, which leads to another turnover. In Cleveland, James's defensive success was more about brute force athleticism, but in Miami, he played a more cerebral
He played
game.
team
He
defense.
isn't preoccupied with this cut because he knows a middle pick and roll is coming, and then he's big enough to battle with Duncan for the rebound. Here he needs to help on the roll man, but realizes he's in a pickle, leaving a wide open 3 or maybe a dunk, so he covers the pass while contesting the mid-range shot. He was an active communicator, calling out for a switch so his point guard could find a more natural matchup, then instantly pouncing on a breakdown to help influence a block from Shane Battier. LeBron's on a sharpshooter here, and he chases him off 2 screens for a decent look, and all that action pulled rebounders out of the paint, and it's a foul. So the next time down, LeBron tells Battier to take his man coming off the screen, switches to the big, and just blows the whole thing up. Because of his size, he could comfortably switch onto bigger players like this and guard them in isolation, and he could protect the rim like he was a big man as well. This wasn't the incredible paint protection we've seen from the great bigs in this series, but LeBron added a ton of value lurking in the lane, and since the Heat would often play small ball, he was the primary vertical presence in many of these situations. He was potent enough as a shot blocker to deter shots. Duncan freezes when he sees him here and then is totally stuck, and some of these were elite rejections that you would see from high-end defensive big men. He slides over here in case there's a laydown pass and covers so much ground that he spikes it, and this play is spectacular, coming from the corner after Wade whiffs on a gamble to kill a dunk. Now, he didn't have the same numbers as a shot-blocking big, so these plays weren't always the norm. Sometimes they could be fouls, and other times he wasn't quite as loaded up and vertical on some of these contests at the rim. But his timely rotations in the paint and this big man-like skill were a major asset for the Heat. There was a
look at this, guys. You see effort during these years. I would shut up about LeBron James' defense if he was actually still doing stuff like this, or if he ever did anything like this after 2014.
Horizontal component to these rotations too. He has to cover about 16 feet in the second that this pass is airborne, and that prevents Steph Curry from firing and leads to a bad pass and a steal. He could play a cross-court pass like this, or explode to intercept a roll pass, and that closing speed allowed him to be in 2 places at once. These short little bursts of speed allowed him to cover tons of court like a rangy center fielder in baseball. And his hands were pretty good too, racking up enough steals to land in the 88th percentile historically. Some of these plays on the ball were certainly a bit risky, and so there were some occasional misses in there. On this one, he's in time on the rotation but lunges for more and comes up empty. And sometimes he'd sell out for a pick 6, and when those plays failed, they often exposed the defense and led to a high-value shot. But he rarely lost track of the action off ball. Here's a lapse on some screening set, although he would
see that one
of the action off ball. Here's a lapse on some screening set, although he was
That's
usually
what we're used to seeing now.
Pretty aware of his own man and the basketball from the other side of the court. So, despite a few hiccups, he was a fairly low-error player away from the ball. He was highly knowledgeable.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff. That's like mental laziness and physical laziness, and he didn't do it nearly as much back then. He does it a lot now where he'll just stand in one place and just let whatever is going to happen.
Of opponents' playbooks during these seasons, helping early and rotating on point in Miami's scrambling scheme. And he was even known to call out opposing sets. He switches this to blow up Indiana's screening action, and his pattern recognition skills were also a key to his defensive value. That value helped the Heat produce quality defensive ratings in the regular season and solid ones in the postseason. Among regular playoff teams, they were about middle of the pack in defensive performance during these years, despite playing smaller lineups than most teams at the time. LeBron also loved rear view blocks, recovering to catch players from behind.
Giggity.
And this was part of his chase down arsenal in transition, where he just size up smaller players like an adult playing with young children.
Yeah, he still does this to this day.
He tried a similar approach in the half court, although it was far less effective on drives like this when James lost a step to the dribbler. And containing ball handlers in space was probably his biggest defensive weakness.
It is, because a lot of people credit him for getting the block from behind, but it's usually on his own man, which means that he got blown past, which is a bad thing. You know, so if he could recover that 1 out of 5 times and make a highlight, that's not covering the 4 times he got blown by for an easy basket. So it'd be better if he can actually stay in front of his man and avoid that whole situation altogether.
It wasn't that LeBron couldn't keep quicker or smaller players in front of him. He used his length and size to cut off angles well, but he also had to guess and react instantly to change directions on stops and starts. And he was vulnerable to these because at 270 pounds, it took a lot to break and re-accelerate in short spaces.
Yep, that's what we call like the crab walk, because he doesn't shuffle. He doesn't shuffle very well. He never really has. And of course, as he's gotten older and bulkier, that's gotten worse. But he doesn't actually shuffle his feet quickly whatsoever.
It took a lot to break and re-accelerate.
You see what's going on? He's one step behind already. And it's over. But then this is how he catches up to his guys, because he is a fast sprinter. So once he gets blown by with the crab walk, then he has to accelerate and sprint to catch up like that. Even though that wasn't a block, that's his strategy, is to just catch up like a track star, as opposed to staying in front of his man. But that is actually bad fundamental defense right there. The good fundamental defense would dictate that you stay in front of your guy, you keep your man in front of you. Simple.
His technique worked really well whenever those little hops and reactions were on time and in the right direction. But if his feet were off the ground when his man started to go, he couldn't laterally recover at his size. This made LeBron an interesting on-ball defender because he regularly broke down to change of direction attacks, but when he sized it up well, he could keep really small guards in front of him. He was fairly successful, switched onto the shifty Tony Parker in the 2013 finals, and he was big enough to then switch onto Duncan and stonewall him in the post. Another downside to being so big was that navigating screens was a tricky endeavor. James didn't have that sharp cornering required to stick with some of these routes, and he couldn't really slide that much weight or rely on tap dancing feet to slip by some picks. You see him go wide here, so he can chase with more of a running motion versus sliding. And because he was so broad, he offered a large screening target, which made it challenging for him to stay with smaller players when they ran around like this. All the major one-number metrics view LeBron as a strong defender, and with his huge offensive value, his overall impact metrics are right at the top of the heap. Interestingly, these numbers were higher in his first 2 MVP seasons, when he was the lone star in Cleveland, surrounded by outside shooters who gave him space to attack the rim. In Miami, he didn't have the ball as much, and his off-ball impact paled in comparison to his on-ball game. He could hurt defenses with timely cuts, he had good instincts for when to backdoor a vulnerable defender, but his spot-up shooting was only mediocre. And more importantly, playing away from the ball took the decision-making out of his hands.
Which is unfortunate to me, because I would have liked to see LeBron play a lot more off the ball. Because as an alley-ooper, as a driver, he was deadly off the ball. You know, we saw a couple highlights there where all he has to do is wait for an opportunity, start sprinting towards the hoop. That's a 90% right there. Just lob it up to LeBron, he's going to dunk it home. Now, the only problem is players learn to play off of him when he's off ball, because he's not going to shoot the three. So if you were to get that outside shot down, like I've said, like a broken record 1,000 times, it's so evident that he could have been the greatest of all time if he would have just focused on these couple of things, these couple of major issues. But playing off the ball, you got to be able to knock down a shot. So if he would have been able to knock down that shot on a regular basis, a la someone like Ray Allen, you notice that he's off the ball right now. LeBron's got the ball, but his man is still right there within a closing distance of a couple of feet. So if he catches the ball, you can contest that shot. LeBron never did that, so you can play off the ball with LeBron. And the only way you're going to score, LeBron's going to score when he's playing off the ball, is an alley-oop.
Scoring resiliency, but LeBron ball provided an overall resiliency that was difficult to scheme against because he could leverage his scoring and playmaking off of each other. He couldn't just plug into any offense and add the same value, but a well-constructed attack built around LeBron produced a championship-level offense. His high IQ, Swiss Army knife defense also made him one of the better perimeter defenders in league history, and that two-way impact probably made him the greatest floor raiser we've ever seen. So, given that he has a great argument as a top 10 scorer and top 10 playmaker ever, it's easy to see why so many people consider LeBron James the greatest player of all time. For more historical content and to support this channel, head over to patreon.com/thinkingbasketball and check out Thinking Basketball, the book, on Amazon. That goes deeper on a number of ideas explored in this series. There are also longer discussions on many of these players on the Thinking Basketball podcast. And if you're curious about stats from this video, there's an entire stat series on this channel. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and that wherever you are, you're having a great day.
Thinking Basketball was also on an official NBA. It was on the official NBA YouTube channel recently, and he was doing game breakdowns. He was breaking down the 04 Pistons versus Lakers, I believe it was. It was, yeah. And it was so cool because he's doing it for the official NBA. Like, Thinking Basketball, what do you got? I mean, 600,000 subscribers, and like, my guy's gone global. Like, it's awesome. Anyways, I thought he did a great job here breaking down LeBron's peak, which I agree was 2012, 2013. He showed LeBron's pros, his cons, the effects of having LeBron and playing the LeBron ball. I think it was a pretty fair assessment. And then added in with my added context, like, I think you get the full picture here of what happened, why it happened the way it did, and why they went 2 for 4 out there. Those couple of weaknesses that could have been worked on, I easily think Miami Heat would have won 4 out of 4. LeBron probably wouldn't have left. He would have stayed there. But yeah, it was just those couple of weaknesses that LeBron had to work on, and he just never did. So it is what it is, you guys. I believe LeBron had every tool, and he had the plate set for him to be the greatest player of all time. I really do. You know, his physique, his strength, the league basically just like rolled the red carpet out for him the second he got drafted. Like, and then combine that with like these insane teams that he's been a part of. This big three, the Cavs big three, and then what's going on in LA. He had everything set for him to win at least 10 championships in my mind. In 21 seasons, yeah, 10 of those should have been championship years. I seriously believe it. But, you know, he's going to retire with the same weaknesses he got drafted with. And these were the only 2 years where he actually played like real solid defense. And it's just unfortunate because when I'm watching old footage like this, I remember that in the 2000s, I was a fan. Sure, I liked Dwyane Wade and Steve Nash and Derrick Rose. I liked them a lot more than I liked LeBron. But I was still a fan and I was rooting for him. You know, I thought he was a good kid. And I thought he just had those cup. It's funny, I've been saying it for like 15, or I've been saying it for 20 years with LeBron's game. If he could work on that outside shot and get a little better on defense and get a post game, LeBron's going to be the GOAT. Been saying it. Those three things over and over and over again for 21 years. But it's too late now. It's not going to happen. So it is what it is. He still had a pretty good career nonetheless. But nah, he belongs nowhere in my GOAT conversation anymore. It's just not the thing. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Check out Thinking Basketball's channel if you enjoyed this. And like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you dislike it. And subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. I'm going to skip out on the After Dark tonight, you guys. But I will see you again tomorrow morning for the next one. Thank you all for watching, and peace out.